On Father's Day, my son handed me a Tim Hortons gift card with a drugstore sticker still on the back, while he gave his father-in-law a 3-week luxury ski package at Whistler, worth $24,000. He did it in front of 20 people. He looked me in the eye while he did it, and he smiled. I'm going to tell you what happened in the 7 days that followed, because 7 days later, a Lotto Max ticket changed everything, and 61 missed calls told me everything I'd needed to know about my son for a very long time. Before we go further, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, drop a comment below. If you're ready to hear how this ends, stay with me. You won't want to miss the phone call. I'm a retired high school history teacher, 35 years at a school in Guelph, Ontario. My wife, Anne, she passed 8 years ago, ovarian cancer, quick and cruel. Used to joke that I spent so much time teaching other people's children how the past worked that I sometimes forgot to pay attention to the present. She wasn't wrong about much. I have a pension, Ontario teachers. It's comfortable, not impressive, not by the standards of the people my son married into, but comfortable. I own the house my parents left me, a 3-bedroom brick semi on a quiet street in the south end of Guelph, and I have enough for groceries, the gas bill, and a coffee when I want one. That's always been enough for me. My daughter Bridget is a paramedic in Hamilton. 31 years old, works 12-hour shifts, comes home smelling like adrenaline and disinfectant. She visits when she can. She brings good coffee. She asks real questions. She remembers what I said last time. She is, without question, the better half of what I managed to raise. My son Gregory is 39. He runs a private mortgage lending company out of a glass tower on Bay Street in Toronto. He met Camille at a charity gala 8 years ago. Her family money was older than most of the buildings they were standing in, and they married in a ceremony that cost more than I earned in my first decade of teaching. I wasn't consulted on the venue. I was told the date. Camille's father is Sterling Beaumont, retired real estate developer, an estate in Oakville, a man who considers a 15-year-old Scotch the minimum acceptable poor, and who made his money in commercial land development across the GTA before retiring 6 years ago to focus, as best I could tell, on ensuring everyone within earshot understood precisely how much he had accumulated. The Father's Day dinner was held at Sterling's property in Oakville, the kind of house that makes you straighten your spine when you pull into the driveway. 6,000 square feet of stone and glass, overlooking a ravine. The furniture looked like it had never been sat in. There were flowers on the table that probably cost more than my monthly hydro bill. I drove down alone. Bridget had offered to come, but she'd taken an extra shift to cover a colleague going through a difficult stretch. She texted me before I left. "Don't let them make you feel small, Dad." I told her I wouldn't. I mostly believed myself. There were 20 people around the table. Sterling's side of the family, Camille's cousins, 2 couples from their golf club, a handful of people whose names I'd already lost by the time the appetizers arrived. I sat near the middle, wedged between a man I'd met twice before and would not remember, and a woman who had been to France 3 times that year and needed everyone to know it. Gregory sat at Sterling's end. Of course he did. The meal was fine. Sterling held the conversation at his end like a man addressing shareholders. At some point he looked down the table at me with the particular smile that wealthy men have, the one that is technically a smile, and said, "Still keeping busy with the history books, are you?" "Here and there," I said. "Good for you," he said, in a tone that made it sound like anything but. When the main course was cleared, Sterling tapped his glass. He wanted to mark the occasion, he said. Family was everything. He glanced at my son. Gregory stood. He reached into his jacket and produced an envelope. Sterling opened it with the measured patience of a man who expected good news and was accustomed to receiving it. 3 weeks at Whistler, Gregory announced. Private chalet, heli skiing, business class both ways, every night covered. You've been talking about going back for years. Consider it done. The room applauded. Sterling stood and embraced Gregory the way men of his generation embrace someone who has just demonstrated real value. People murmured their approval around the table. So generous. Gregory, honestly. What a son-in-law. Then my son turned to me. He reached into his other jacket pocket and placed something on the table in front of me. It slid a few centimeters on the white linen, and stopped beside my water glass, a Tim Hortons gift card. The kind you buy at a Shoppers Drug Mart when you've forgotten to get something. There was still a sticker on the back, the pharmacy's logo, clear as anything. "Thought you could use a coffee, Dad," he said, and then he smiled wider. A few people laughed, the polite kind, the kind that fills space. Sterling chuckled. Camille covered her mouth. Someone at the far end of the table said something I couldn't fully hear, but that produced more laughter. It filled the room, easy and unrestrained. I picked up the card. "Thanks," I said. I slipped it into my jacket pocket and looked down at the tablecloth. I left early, said I had an early morning. No one tried to stop me. The drive back to Guelph takes 45 minutes on a good day. That night I barely felt the road. I kept thinking about the sticker on the back of that card. He hadn't even pulled it off. He'd remembered I existed somewhere around the time he was checking out at the pharmacy, grabbed whatever was nearest the till, added it to his bill, slid it into his jacket, and then in front of 20 people, tossed it across the table to me like a tip. $24,000 to his father-in-law, a drugstore gift card to his father. I got home, put my keys on the kitchen counter, and stood in the dark for a while. The house was quiet the way it always is now. Anne used to hate quiet houses. She'd always have the radio on, or she'd be talking to the dog we used to have, or she'd be calling down the hall to whoever was home. The quiet came in when she left, and it never fully went. I went into the study, my father's bookshelves, floor to ceiling, real joinery, not a nail gun job. I sat at the desk and took the Tim Hortons card out of my pocket and set it on the blotter. $10. That's what it was worth. I'd checked online before I went to bed, a $10 card. The kind a stranger gives an acquaintance at an office secret Santa when they've drawn someone they don't know well enough to think about. And then I noticed the envelope. It was sitting on the far corner of the desk, half under a stack of continuing education marking I still do in retirement. A brown envelope, manila, letter-sized. The label on the front read, BML Client Files, Sullivan Mortgage. Sullivan Mortgage, Gregory's company. The full name was Bay Mortgage and Lending Solutions, but he'd always called it Sullivan Mortgage in conversation. I didn't remember it being there before. I picked it up and opened it. Inside were 7 contracts, private mortgage agreements, each one neatly printed and notarized. I read the first one carefully. Borrower, a couple in Brampton. Loan amount, $68,000. Purpose, home renovation after a basement flood. Effective annual interest rate, and here it had been buried in the fee structure, broken across 3 separate line items labeled processing fee, administrative maintenance charge, and portfolio insurance premium, 67%. I set that one down and read the next. Borrower, a woman in Mississauga, single mother, loan amount, $49,000. Purpose, debt consolidation after a medical leave that her employer's short-term disability hadn't fully covered. Total effective rate, when the fees were added properly, 63%. 7 contracts, all of them structured the same way. All of them with the true cost buried in language designed to obscure it, and every single one of them, when you did the arithmetic honestly, above 60% annually. In Canada, under Section 347 of the Criminal Code, 60% is the threshold for criminal interest. Charging above it is an indictable offense. My son wasn't running a mortgage company. I took out my phone and photographed every page, every contract, every signature, every clause. Then I put the envelope back exactly where I'd found it. I sat in that study until the sky turned gray and the first birds started up, and I thought about 7 families who had needed help and gone to my son, and walked away believing they had found it. The week that followed, I taught my continuing education class. I went to the farmer's market on Saturday morning. I had Bridget over for Sunday dinner and said nothing. I needed to think before I moved. Saturday afternoon, she called from the car on her way home after a long shift. She sounded tired, but there was something deliberate in her voice. Quick question, Dad. Did you check that Tim Hortons card? What do you mean? Check it. Gregory stuck a Lotto Max ticket under the sticker. He mentioned it at the table. Did you not hear him? I hadn't heard. By the time he'd set the card down, I'd been somewhere else entirely. Scratch the sticker off, she said. There's a ticket underneath. Check it on the Lotto Max website. I sighed. I walked to the coat closet, reached into my jacket, and pulled out the card. I peeled back the drugstore sticker. Underneath was a Lotto Max quick pick from the previous Friday's draw. I sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. The results for that draw were at the top of the Lotto Max page. The numbers were 7, 14, 23, 31, 38, 44, bonus 9. I held the ticket up to the screen. First number 7, match. Second number 14, match. My hand was steadier than I expected. Third 23, match. Fourth 31, match. I set the ticket flat on the table. Fifth 38, match. Sixth 44, match. Bonus 9, match. All 7. I opened 3 other browser tabs on 3 different news sites and checked the numbers again. The jackpot that week had been rolling for 6 consecutive draws. It had reached $68 million. In Canada, lottery winnings are not taxed, not federally, not provincially. $68 million, no deductions, no forms, nothing owed. I set my phone down. I could hear Bridget's voice from the speaker, small and distant, saying my name. I couldn't answer. I sat in the kitchen where Anne used to make Sunday morning pancakes, where Bridget and Gregory had done homework, at this same table, where I'd read the letter that told me my parents had left me this house, and I looked at 7 matching numbers and tried to understand what they meant. I told no one for 4 days, not even Bridget. I needed time to think clearly. On the 5th day, I called my sister Marguerite. She was already at the coffee shop when I arrived, a small independent place on Wyndham Street that's been there since before either of us had gray hair. 2 cups on the table, one already half gone. When she looked up and saw my face, she set down her cup. "What happened?" she said. I sat down and handed her my phone with the contract photos open. She scrolled through them slowly. The color went out of her face gradually, like a light being turned down. 7 families, I said, all at rates above the criminal threshold, all with their homes or their businesses as collateral. She looked up. "Where did you get these?" "Gregory left them at my house. I don't know if it was an accident or if he thought I'd never understand what I was reading." She set the phone down. "Gregory," she said, "just the name, flat." "There's more," I said. "But first, you mentioned at Easter that you'd been holding on to something. Something about him. I need to know what it was." She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was careful. "He came to my apartment in February. Needed to use my printer, said his was broken. Left his phone on the kitchen counter when he went to use the washroom." She paused. A message came in on the screen. I glanced at it without thinking, and then I couldn't stop reading. She took out her own phone and turned it to face me. The messages were between Gregory and someone saved in her contacts as V, 8 months of them. Early on, they were professional, client files, strategy, numbers. Then they became something else entirely. Plans to meet. Hotel names in messages that went well past business hours, and buried in the middle, from a conversation in March. "Once the old man has to offload the Guelph house, we'll have the capital we need. He's too stubborn to ask for help and too proud to file insolvency. He'll keep paying until he can't." The old man. That's what he called me, the old man, in messages about how to liquidate the house my parents left me. "Who is V?" I asked. "Vivian, his senior associate. She manages the private lending files." I handed back her phone. She wiped her eyes. "I should have told you sooner. I kept thinking it would come to nothing. I'm sorry." "You're telling me now," I said. "That's what matters." I looked at her. "There's one more thing you don't know yet." That's when I told her about the ticket. She stared at me for a full 10 seconds without moving. Then she pressed both hands flat on the table. $68 million, she said. "Tax-free," I said. Another long breath. "Does Gregory know?" "Nobody knows, just you and Bridget." She leaned forward, and something shifted in her, the worry in her eyes becoming something sharper. "Then you have a choice to make," she said. "And you need a lawyer before you make it." I nodded. "I'm meeting one tomorrow." Aubrey Sinclair has his office in a converted heritage building on Woolwich Street. We'd met through a mutual friend years earlier. He'd handled Anne's estate. Careful, thorough, The kind of man who reads every line before he agrees to anything. I handed him the folder the next morning. He read the contracts the way a good lawyer reads anything, completely without expression, with occasional notes in the margins of his legal pad. 12 minutes. Then he looked up. "Your son is charging above the 60% threshold," he said. "That's a criminal offense under Section 347. The fee structure is clearly designed to obscure the effective rate, which introduces fraud into the picture alongside the usury." Something loosened in my chest. "What about my contract?" I said. "The one on my house." 3 years earlier, a kitchen fire had left me with $110,000 in damage after my insurance company spent 8 months disputing the claim and settling for a fraction of what I was owed. 2 banks had turned me down for a repair loan. Something about debt ratios, the age of the property, the usual explanations that amount to no. Gregory had offered to help. "Family rate," he'd said. "Don't worry about the details, just sign where I've marked." I'd been exhausted and I'd trusted him. I found out 6 months later that the effective rate, with all the fees included, came to 64%. My monthly payment was $2,800 on a pension, and my house was listed as collateral. "This contract is void," Aubrey said, tapping the page. "Legally unenforceable. You don't owe him a cent. His lien on the property has no legal standing." He looked at me over his reading glasses. "And if he's done this to multiple people, which these 7 contracts confirm, we're looking at a referral to the RCMP Commercial Crime Unit. Criminal interest, fraud, potentially conspiracy, given what you've described about the associate." I sat back in the chair. My house. He had been planning to take my house. "File everything," I said. Bridget came for dinner that week. I told her all of it over the kitchen table. The contracts, the messages, the lawyer, the ticket. She listened without interrupting, both hands wrapped around her mug. When I finished, she was quiet for a while. "How many families?" she finally asked. 7 that I have on paper, possibly more." She nodded slowly. Then she looked at me the way she sometimes looks at the worst calls she's been on, not with despair, but with the particular focused calm of someone deciding what needs to be done. "Promise me something," she said. "What?" "This is about stopping him, not about hurting him." "I know the difference," I said. "I know you do." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand once. "Then maybe it's time he learned what happens when you underestimate a history teacher." I claimed the ticket through a numbered corporation Aubrey helped me establish. Filed the complaint with the RCMP the same week. On a Tuesday morning, while Gregory was in a breakfast meeting at some hotel in the financial district, I sent one message to the family group chat. "Video call this Sunday evening, 7 p.m. Everyone needs to be there." Gregory responded within minutes. "Finally. About time, Dad." Camille sent a thumbs up. Sterling, who had somehow ended up in the group chat, wrote that he would join if he could arrange it. I set my phone face down on the desk and looked out at the backyard. The maple my father planted 40 years ago was just starting to turn at the edges. October was coming. Sunday arrived cold and clear. At 10 to 7, I sat at the study desk and arranged everything I needed. The loan agreement with the effective rate, calculated in the margin in red ink. The 7 client contracts. The screenshots Marguerite had taken of Gregory's messages with Viviane, including the one about the old man and the Guelph house. A printout of Section 347 of the Criminal Code. And a statement from the numbered corporation. I tested the screen share twice. Then I clicked Start. Gregory and Camille appeared in one box. Their condo in the city. Gregory in a pressed shirt like he'd prepared for a business call, which in some ways he had. Sterling joined from his home office in Oakville a moment later. He looked like a man who was expecting good news. Silver hair, reading glasses resting on the table in front of him. The patience of someone who had always gotten what he came for. "Well," Sterling said, looking into the camera. "Is it true?" Gregory leaned forward. "Dad, you checked the ticket?" "I did," I said. All 3 of them moved slightly toward their screens. Camille's hands came up to her mouth. Gregory exhaled, long and slow. $68 million, I said, tax-free. For a moment the call was full of breath and half-formed words. Sterling smiled. A real one. The first genuine one I'd ever seen from him. Gregory sat back with both hands behind his head and then came forward again. All business. Dad, he said, listen to me. This is serious money. You need the right people around this. Investments, tax sheltering on the growth, estate planning, trust structures. I have the contacts. This is exactly what I do. Let me get you in front of the right advisors. That's what family does. Gregory, I said. He kept going. I'm serious. You can't just walk into a lottery office and take a check. There are ways to do this properly. Let me help you. Gregory. He stopped. Before we talk about the money, I said, there are a few things we need to go through. I shared my screen. The loan agreement appeared on all 3 displays. My copy, the one I'd signed 3 years ago, while the kitchen was still half open to the sky, and the insurance company's lawyers were still writing letters. This is the contract you gave me after the fire, I said, when I needed help and 2 banks had already turned me down. Gregory's face changed slightly, just around the eyes. The effective annual interest rate on this contract, when the processing fee, the administrative maintenance charge, and the insurance premium are properly combined, is 64%. I let that land. In Canada, the criminal threshold under Section 347 of the Criminal Code is 60%. This has been a criminal contract for 3 years. Sterling set down his reading glasses. What contract? What fire? 3 years ago, Gregory offered me a loan after a kitchen fire, I said. I was desperate. I signed without fully understanding what I was agreeing to. I have been paying $2,800 a month on a teacher's pension. The math moved across Camille's face before she said anything. She turned to Gregory. He's been paying you $2,800 a month for 3 years on a teacher's pension? It's a private mortgage agreement. It's a criminal one, I said. My lawyer confirmed it. The contract is void. The lien on my house has no legal standing. Sterling stood up. Something had hardened in him. You charged your father-in-law criminal interest rates and used his family home as collateral. It's more complex than. Show me how, Sterling said. I clicked to the next set of documents. 7 contracts filled their screens. I scrolled slowly. A couple in Brampton, 68% effective rate, home listed as security. A single mother in Mississauga, 63%, equipment and future wages as collateral. 5 more. 7 families, 7 desperate situations turned into structured profit. Camille's voice came quietly. Those are real people. Yes, I said. 11 more have come forward since I filed the complaint. The RCMP Commercial Crime Unit opened an investigation last week. Sterling sat back down. He looked older than he had 60 seconds ago. Then I shared the last set of documents. The screenshots appeared. 8 months of messages. I had removed the most personal content, but the pattern was clear. The strategy, the intent, and then the message from March, time-stamped, unambiguous. Once this old man has to offload the Guelph house, we'll have the capital we need. He's too stubborn to ask for help and too proud to file insolvency. He'll just keep paying until he can't. Camille read it. I watched her face. The old man, she said. Gregory said nothing. She looked at me. That's you. Then she looked back at him. That's his father. Camille, I can explain. You put his house as collateral, she said. Her voice was very controlled now. You set the rate above the legal limit. You were waiting for him to default. The contracts were signed voluntarily. By people who had no other options, I said. By people in crisis who came to you because they had nowhere else to turn. Sterling was already on his feet, phone in hand. He wasn't looking at the screen anymore. He was looking at Gregory the way a man looks at something he has fundamentally miscalculated. We are done here, he said. Gregory, don't contact me without a lawyer present. His screen went dark. Camille sat with it for a moment. Then she looked at me directly. I didn't know, she said. I want you to know that. I believed her. I told her so. Her screen went dark. And then it was just Gregory, alone in the Toronto condo, with the city spread behind him through the floor-to-ceiling windows. He'd shown me with such pride the first time I'd visited. The investigation is already open, I said. This doesn't stop with the phone call. He was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was low. You just destroyed everything. No, I said. I told the truth about what you built. That's different. I'm your son. Yes, I said. And for 3 years you called me the old man in your private messages while you planned to foreclose on the house your grandparents left me. I looked at him, really looked at him. I didn't want this. I wanted a son I could trust. What you gave me instead was a creditor with my own name. He started to say something. Goodbye, Gregory. I clicked end. The room was very quiet. The clock my father wound every Sunday morning ticked on the wall. I sat back in his chair in his study and looked at the dark screen, and I noticed that my hands were not shaking. Bridget called 11 minutes later. Dad, she said, are you all right? Yes, I said, and I meant it. The investigation moved steadily, the way Aubrey had said it would. By the following month, 4 more families had come forward with similar contracts, 11 in total. The RCMP confirmed they were treating the pattern as organized fraud. Gregory's business license was suspended pending the outcome. His accounts were frozen. He retained a criminal defense lawyer from a firm in Ottawa, whose name I recognized from the news. Sterling called me 3 weeks after the video call. He was brief. He wanted me to know he'd had no knowledge of what Gregory had been running. He said that he had spent years measuring worth by wealth, and he was beginning to understand what that had cost him. He apologized for the Father's Day dinner, for a lot of dinners before it. I thanked him. I didn't encourage further contact. Some apologies are enough on their own. Camille sent a letter. She had retained her own lawyer and was cooperating fully with the RCMP. She was filing for divorce. She wrote that she had spent years seeing me through Gregory's lens, as less, somehow, as someone comfortable rather than impressive, as a man who had chosen a classroom over something that mattered more. She was sorry. It was a good letter. Honest in the way that costs something to write. I read it twice and set it in the drawer where I keep things worth keeping. Bridget came over the night after the call and sat across from me at the kitchen table and asked how I felt. Like I can breathe, I said. She smiled. Good. You've been holding your breath for 3 years. The scholarship fund was established through the university the following spring. $40,000 annually, in my parents' names, for students in the humanities, history, philosophy, English literature, the degrees that people call impractical, and that teach you, if you pay attention, to read what is actually there rather than what you're being told to see. The first recipient sent me a handwritten card. She said she had been working 2 jobs to stay enrolled and that the scholarship meant she could leave the night shift and sleep properly. She said she was going to study history. I wrote back and told her she'd made a good choice. That history teaches you everything you need to know about what people are capable of. The worst of it, and if you look carefully, the best. The house is still standing on its quiet street in the south end of Guelph. Gregory's lien was formally voided by the court 4 months after the investigation opened. The debt that should never have existed is gone. The house that was supposed to become his capital is mine, and after me it will go to Bridget. I kept the lottery ticket. It's framed now, above the desk in the study my father built with his own hands, the drugstore sticker still visible on the corner. People ask about it sometimes. Students from the continuing education class, neighbors, Bridget's friends who come by for Sunday dinner. I tell them what it is. A quick pick my son slipped under a pharmacy sticker because he thought it was a joke. A reminder that some gifts are worth exactly what the person giving them thinks they are. And some, if you hold on to them long enough, if you refuse to let them make you small, turn out to be worth considerably more than that. The clock my father wound every Sunday ticks on the wall behind me. The maple in the backyard has gone fully red. The house holds its ground. I'm still here, still teaching 1 evening a week, still walking to the farmer's market on Saturday mornings, still cooking dinner for Bridget on Sundays, still, most importantly, in possession of the only things that ever actually belonged to me. This house, this life, and the truth I finally told out loud. That's enough. That has always been enough.